Hello and welcome to probably the most exciting Big Finish review on my channel for 2019. Forget the 10th Doctor Adventures Volume 3. This is probably the review you've all been looking forward to, hopefully, on my channel. And it is the return of my G, the Don, the Governor, the 3rd Doctor. Oh yeah, Volume 5. And I said in my last 3rd Doctor Adventures in Volume 4 in that review that I wonder what they're going to do for Volume 5. And I don't think anyone would have expected what they did because, oh boy, they took everybody by surprise. They give us the Brigadier back. They give us Liz Shaw. And they give us good old Sergeant Benton. But that's not enough. They thought, you know what, we're going to give you everybody's favourite green lion werewolf creatures, the Primords. Oh yeah, everybody's back. And I have to say that this has probably been the most excited I've been for a Big Finish release for a long time. I say this quite a bit, but I genuinely mean it for this one because this is 3rd Doctor. It's my era. It's the era I'm most protective about, and I've had so many emotions. I've been excited, I've been apprehensive, I've been worried because obviously I've been worried about the recast because, you know, recasts always make people feel a bit on edge, and obviously the Brigadier, much loved character, Liz Shaw, really underrated companion. Obviously we'll find out how I feel about that. So yeah, without further ado, let's just look at the presentation for this release. So taking a look at the presentation for this CD, we have the Doctor Who logo there, we have Joe, Liz, and of course we have one of the Primords, the military base there, the Brigadier, and we have some sort of sound waves there and the sort of 3rd Doctor fiery intro there. Now this, I'm going to spoil because it's in the booklet, so it's not really a spoiler, but that is a Varden. Yes, the 3rd Doctor versus the Varden within this box set. And of course we have the 3rd Doctor there himself, which is kind of peculiar since people complained about the 3rd Doctor not actually being on the sidebar. He's there for Volume 5. As soon as they get rid of the sidebar, the 3rd Doctor appears. So yeah, better late than never. The side of the release and the back of the release. So if you want to know more about the stories, then do feel free to pause and you can have a read for yourself about the stories. Taking a look at the leaflet now, we have the production credits for this release, and we have some lovely cast photos of the cast involved within this release, which is rather lovely. And then we have the cast list for the stories themselves. And for those wondering, that is the reversible cover. So taking a look at the disc art, now the disc art is basically the cover but with more of a sort of cosmic space background, which is very reminiscent of the 3rd Doctor era. So as you can see, all 5 discs included within the set feature the same artwork. So on to the first story, Primord, written by John Dorney. Now Primord is probably the story what has the most riding on it, as it is the return of the Brigadier and Liz Shaw, and it is a sequel to a beloved story in fan circles, Inferno, which was the first 3rd Doctor story I got on DVD, so it's a very special story for me. And did I mention that this is the first story John Dorney has wrote for the 3rd Doctor, so no pressure, so we'll see whether he delivered a cracking 3rd Doctor tale. So did John Dorney deliver a cracking 3rd Doctor story? My answer is yes. This is a perfect love letter to Don Houghton's Doctor Who stories Inferno and Mind of Evil. I think that's the perfect way to describe this story because it's kind of a combination of Inferno meets the Mind of Evil. It kind of has that feeling, and I think that is the perfect way to describe this story. And if you can't tell, I absolutely love this story. It's definitely one of the highlights of Big Finish's catalogue for 2019 so far. Part 1, can I just say that this has one of the most darkest opening scenes to a Big Finish story. It's up there with Project Twilight in my opinion, but this is pretty reflective of the 3rd Doctor era. You know, look at Death to the Daleks, how that opens. You know, the opening shot is the Captain getting an arrow through the chest. You know, but this opening for Primord is a bit more twisted, and the story kind of has that sort of Ambassadors of Death vibe, but I feel like this is kind of, the story's very interesting because it has that sort of season 7 feel to it, but with sort of the season 10 sort of chemistry between the Doctor and Joe and the Brigadier, but kind of has that sort of nitty grittiness of season 8 as well, so it does have quite a nice combination of the different aspects of the 3rd Doctor era incorporated within this story, with prisoners being taken and transported, and of course the Brigadier gets wind of this and thinks that this is a prime job for UNIT. But the Doctor has other plans than chase after petty criminals. The Doctor plans to have a reunion with Liz Shaw, because Liz wants the Doctor's help for something. Now, one of the highlights for me with Primord is the character interaction, the character moments within this story, and this story is littered with so many wonderful moments within it, and this scene I'm going to mention in particular is when the Doctor, Liz and Joe have dinner, and they're just reminiscing about old times, and it's just a scene you can really picture, you know, the 3rd Doctor with, you know, a glass of red wine and just really enjoying himself and just being the showman, telling these extravagant stories, and we get sort of throwbacks to Inferno within that. And that scene in particular really sets up Jo's character journey within this story. She feels like the Doctor and Liz were simplifying things to her, you know, and this story really shows how different Liz and Jo are, but shows how wonderful they are in their own different way. Now this leads into the two plot threads intertwining with each other, with Jo going off to help the Brigadier, and the Doctor goes off with Liz to see what Liz needs the Doctor's help for. And this leads to a brilliant cliffhanger, a very traditional, shocking, classic Who cliffhanger. And I have to say, overall, this is a very strong opening episode. Now, I listened to part 1 before the actual set was fully released, and let me tell you, those few days waiting for the actual box set to be released were quite painful. It was just, I really wanted to know what's going to happen next within this story, so I feel like that's a really strong sign of a good episode 1, and a really good sign of a strong story that you want to know what happens next. And yeah, I feel like this part really sets up the story very well, and as part 1s go, I think that this is a great example of how to do an episode 1, because it sets up, you know, all the little plot points, you know, from the political side. And it's one of those things where there are tiny little details to pay attention to, because there are small details mentioned within this episode and throughout the whole story what will come really into play later on within the story. And when those little plot points come together, you're like, how did I not notice that? It's just a very clever story, how it lays down these little small details what you don't think much of. You just think, oh yeah, that's just pretty casual stuff. But when it's revealed into the grand scheme of things, it is brilliant. Part 2. Now this part is when we start to expand on Inferno, with us exploring the green primordial slime and the aftermath of Starman's project, and explains Liz's experiments and why she needs the Doctor's help. So while all that's happening, while the Doctor and Liz are doing all science experiments, which is just lovely, we have the Brig and Jo investigating the military base and trying to gain access, and why they refuse to help, you know, in trying to track down these missing prisoners. And Brig and Jo have a lovely moment of interrogating the security guard, Callan, in a pub, and it's just brilliant because Jo switches on that charm, and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful little scene. And the Brig gets a wonderful moment there. It's brilliant. And we finally learn the mystery of what's happened to these prisoners, and you know what's happening on in this military base, with Jo and the Brigadier being captured. And so the Brigadier and Jo captured, and there's something up with the Doctor. This leads to one of the best cliffhangers, and probably my favourite cliffhanger of the box set of these two stories. And just John Dorney's just amazing at cliffhangers right now. I'm just going to say this now, but this is a superb cliffhanger. It's just got a wonderful twist to what you definitely don't see coming, and it is brilliant. I absolutely love this, and it's a great little episode and continues to build on more things, which is wonderful. So yeah, part 2, brilliant. Part 3. Now I mentioned about the little details in part 1. Well, this is when they all come into play and raises more questions. You know, what other work is Liz doing? And this is when we learn the Primords' true purpose, you know, to weaponize them, and explains them genetically. And this leads to a fantastic speech by the Brigadier about, you know, genocide. And this is when the story takes even more of a twisted turn, as we see people transform into Primords, which is just horrible and brutal, and the screams of terror. And you know, that just sounds like a Doctor Who title in itself, The Screams of Terror. And this leads to another terrific Doctor Who cliffhanger. It just makes you want to listen to the next episode straight away. So yeah, Primord is ticking all the boxes so far. Part 4. This part is very much the action part. Unit versus the Primords, with it very much having this sort of last man standing vibe. And this part very much feels very hopeless, that all hope is lost, you know, as the Primords are unleashed, with us having people being ripped apart by them, and the Doctor, you know, frantically trying to find a cure, with us seeing, you know, with us seeing even more little plot points coming into play. You know, and we have the Doctor's admiration for the Brigadier, which is a great little moment, because despite them locking horns, they have an underlying respect for one another. And the ending, well, it's a nice little twist on the Inferno ending, but it still has kind of a tragic ending to it as well. But I'll let you find out that for yourself. So there we are, let's move on to characters. The third Doctor, played by Tim Trelaw. I have to say this every time, but he just gets better and better, with him really capturing Pertwee's rhythm of speech, you know, mixed out with John Dorney's fabulous writing. It just comes together wonderfully, with John Dorney really utilising the third Doctor's scientific side, with him and Liz working together to find a cure, and him showing his admiration for Liz, and we get some great warmth and charm from the third Doctor, which is just lovely. You know, even have the third Doctor having a little sing-song, and that's not from the wine he drank, you know, which kind of reminds me of Terror of the Autumn, when he's just having the sing-song, you know, going in and out the TARDIS. But when things become a lot more bleak, you know, he has that strong authority, and you believe that he will save the day, And Trim Trelaw within the story does get to play a different side to the third Doctor. Jo Grant, played by Katie Manning, another excellent performance by Katie Manning, bringing the 70s grooviness back and having that bubbly nature of hers, and very protective of the Doctor, showing her compassionate side, but also very flustered about the Doctor and Liz simplifying it for her. But Jo really does come into her own when she's paired with the Brigadier, with her using her initiative, thinking, what would the Doctor do? Liz Shaw, played by Daisy Ashford, I have to say that she did a pretty good job bringing her mother's character to life, because this is played by Caroline John's daughter, which is really nice. Because there are moments within this story where I think, yep, that's Liz, but the story cleverly gets around the problem, in my opinion. Now, this is the thing with Big Finish recasting beloved characters. People are probably too focused on going, oh, that doesn't sound like the character, when they're really missing the bigger picture, which is, you know, they should be focusing on the story. So I feel like if you're too busy engrossed in, you know, going, oh, that person doesn't sound like that character, then you're really missing the whole point. You're missing this amazing story. But I think that John Dorney does a wonderful job capturing Liz, you know, with her no-nonsense attitude, with her being very logical and methodical. And I just love how this story, you know, shows off her witty remarks to the Doctor, and, you know, this story expands on, you know, once she left UNIT, and the story does become rather tragic for her. So this is a great little story for Liz Shaw, you know, showing the sort of, you know, the life outside of UNIT and what she did next. So yeah, this is a great little story for Liz, in my opinion. John Coleshaw, the Brigadier. Well, 2019 Big Finish output certainly is great for John Coleshaw. From Zephon in the 4th Doctor Series 8 to Chameleon with the 5th Doctor main range trilogy, to now the Brigadier. Well, I have to say, John Coleshaw does a spectacular job. You don't even think twice when you're listening to this story. It's spookily accurate. To how John Coleshaw just really captured Nicholas Courtney's delivery with that sort of rather dry wit. And the first scene with the Doctor and the Brig, you know, locking horns, is just a perfect way to reintroduce the Brigadier. With John Dorney's writing, it really captures his military mind and sort of him straight to the point attitude, with him stamping as authority. And we have many lovely moments within this story with the Brig, you know, thinking that this is his last fight, you know, to him being sort of feeling left out with not being invited to the reunion. Which sort of reminds me of the story, what Katie Manning said, that, you know, Nicholas Courtney said, nobody ever comes to the pub with me. You know, it kind of reminds me of that, in a way. So yeah, John Coleshaw did a brilliant job. General Sharp, played by Michael Troughton, a brilliant performance, you know, that typical pertwee political character, reminded me very much of Chin from Claws of Axos, you know, the English for the English, and the greater good of the country, and thinking of his own gains, you know. And he's just quite a cold character, but sounds quite jovial, but as the story progresses, he becomes more and more sinister, and just at a flip of a coin, he just becomes, you know, very sinister. And I just love that he can be kind of this jovial thing, but he just has this kind of sinister edge to him, and it's just brilliantly brought to life by Michael Troughton. So what are my overall thoughts on Primord? Well, overall this story is simply marvellous. It does exactly what a sequel should do, expand on the original story, and is definitely a worthy sequel to Inferno, because this story very much is what Terror of the Autons is to Spearhead from Space. And this story has some of the best cliffhangers Big Finish has ever done, especially part 2. And I think that John Dorney is becoming the master of cliffhangers. You know, the cliffhangers in the 4th Doctor Series 8 to Ravenous to, you know, Better Watch Out. You know, he's just becoming so brilliant at cliffhangers, it's just amazing. This story has so many little plot details what you don't think really matter in the grand scheme of things within the story. But when they all come into play, it just leads to some wonderful, great twists within the story. Now, John Dorney takes the key 3rd Doctor story components and gels them together beautifully. Whether it be the espionage, you know, political intrigue, global threats, to a good bit of science experiments. This story has all the hallmarks to make a cracking 3rd Doctor story, and it certainly does that. The story, you know, part 4 has that lovely sort of last man standing feel to it, you know, great character interaction. You know, this story is a great exploration of the Primords, and this is a story I listened to all in one night, which, if you know me, is pretty rare. I normally listen to one episode a night, and that's me. But there was something about this story what I just had to keep listening to it. There was something about it, whether it be the cliffhangers being amazing, the story just being damn right brilliant, and just, it's a story what gave me goosebumps, and it just gave me chills. It just ticked all the right boxes for me. Being a massive 3rd Doctor fan, it just felt beautiful. It just felt very authentic, whether it be down to the music. It was just brilliant. I was just incredibly engrossed within it, you know. And I think if you're too busy focusing on, oh, that person doesn't sound like that character, then you're really missing an excellent story, because this story, I think, is one of the best 3rd Doctor Big Finish stories they have done. So I'm going to give this story a 10 out of 10 for those reasons alone, that I literally listened to it all in one go. which is very rare for me to do, so that's why this story is a 10 out of 10 for me, because I feel like it is just a really clever story and a worthy sequel to Inferno. It is very much, you know, what Terror of the Autons is to Spearhead from Space. It is wonderful. I love it. I just love Primord. It was just a real treat to listen to. And even when I listened to it again to review it, I listened to it all in one go. And I think that's a real testament to this story, that I could literally listen to this story all in one go and just enjoy it. It is just one of those stories what I just felt incredibly engrossed and invested in. So that's why this story is a 10 out of 10 for me. Moving on to the second story now, Scream of Ghosts. Now, Guy Adams delivers another strong outing, with this being his third story in the range. Now, he has written one of my favourite stories from this range, which is The Transcendent of Ephros from Volume 2. So will this story beat it? So what are my opening thoughts on this story? Well, I think that this story feels incredibly authentic to the era, which is a massive compliment from the music, which really embraces the experimental zany music, which is just wonderful, to the story being that sort of based in that sort of quintessential English village with strange goings on. So this is another solid story by Guy Adams. Part 1. Now, the start of this story intrigues you right from the off, with it feeling very much like the City of Death, how that opened up. So like any good Third Doctor story, we have the Brigadier trying to persuade the Doctor to go on an errand with him, with the Doctor having none of it. And this is the first glimpse we got of John Coulter as the Brigadier when this set was announced, you know, the Doctor, you know, wanting the Doctor to go and see a demonstration of the mobile telephone. Somehow, I don't think they're going to take off. So I kind of get Time Monster vibes off this, you know, with the Brigadier going, "Oh, Doctor, come on, come and see Tomtit with me," you know, that kind of thing. It kind of has that vibe to it in a way. So with the Doctor refusing to budge and rather tinker with the TARDIS speakers, Jo offers to go. And this set as a whole, I really think does focus on Jo as a character. And if you love Jo, and who doesn't love Jo Grant, then you're really going to love these two stories, because Jo really gets to shine in both of these stories. Now, this story does offer something incredibly exciting for fans of the Third Doctor era, as we see John Levine return as Sergeant Benton, what, you know, obviously appeared in the Companion Chronicle, and obviously Unit Assembled, but this time he's in a full cast, you know, Third Doctor story, and it's marvellous. This is when the Doctor actually becomes interested in the story, because Benton's friend on the radio, called Concrete, but is actually called Warren, you know, is in the woods trying to record sounds for his music, but he hears these screams, but when he played the recording back, the screams weren't there. So that leads the Doctor and Benton to go off and investigate. So that's a rather interesting idea, that, you know, the ear can perceive these screams, but on the magnetic tape they cannot be heard, which is rather interesting. And this story really plays with the audio medium very well, involving loud sonic waves, mysterious voices, mobile phone technology, and electronic devices causing mayhem. Now, the story does have some spooky, eerie and many haunting moments, and the chilling soundscape of this story. So let's talk about these eerie screams, what interfere with the village's technology, with voices saying, "Help me, they're coming for us, and they're going to kill us all." You know, this is just brilliant, all coming from people's televisions, which just sends shivers down. So with all that going on, the mobile phone demonstration isn't going too well. I told you the mobile phone wouldn't really catch on. This leads to a very traditional, very classic Pertwee cliffhanger, what you can easily picture. Part 2. Now, this part is when the story continues, ramping up the mystery of the Doctor proving, you know, we aren't dealing with ghosts, with him going to the woods with his equipment to try and find the origin of the scream/broadcasting signal. So it's very much like the Demons, with him going, look, the answer's in science, not, you know, some silly fuddy-duddy stuff, which I really like, you know, the Doctor just going, look, it's all about science, you know. The story raises more questions of who's experimenting with telepathy, you know, and why the village is vanishing. And we do have some lovely funny moments involving Sergeant Benton, but we see the Third Doctor lock horns with the Professor, you know, to see how she links in with the actual grand scheme of things, and that leads to a brilliant moment. Now, the cliffhanger within this episode genuinely is brilliant. It's one of those cliffhangers that makes you think, what on earth is going to happen next? You know, the story continues to lay down the mystery and continues to raise more questions. Part 3, so you're left wondering where on earth has the Doctor gone, and things are getting worse as we have, you know, a very interesting plot twist reveal, and, you know, the threat is revealed as the Vardens, which seems to be Big Finish's go-to surprise monster. And I think Guy Adams does a wonderful job performing and bringing them to life, because they are very condescending and mocking, and they're just downright sinister, and they just work incredibly well on audio. And we get to see their true power, and this part is when we see the Brig, you know, in charge, trying to take charge of the situation, and, you know, why do the Vardens need the villagers? And we do have a very tense cliffhanger. I'm not going to talk too much on part 3, because that's when all the sort of major plot twists sort of come into this story, and it's best left for you to discover for yourself. Part 4 now, this is where Jo really comes into her own and shines. You know, this is where Jo becomes Unit's temporary scientific advisor, as she is sort of the last hope for humanity. Which leads to a funny moment of Jo on the phone to Osgood saying, yes, I know you retired after Devil's End, but can I have your help? Which is rather nice. We expand on the Vardens with them gathering information and energy and their technology we get to expand on. And we also see, the Vardens, fulfill their plan, leading to the final 10 minutes of this story being incredibly tense, and this story really shows the progress Jo has made, whilst being with the Doctor, and we see the Doctor locking horns with the Vardens, which is rather nice. And the resolution for this story is very quirky and very clever, and the ending you could consider a bit on the nose with, Warren, who very much sort of experiments with music, and he plays the Delia Derbyshire theme tune. And we have the Vardens talking over saying, look, we're going to return. And it's kind of on the nose, but I kind of like it. So, yeah, think of that what you will. I mean, I kind of like it. I think that it's kind of a nice on the nose thing, what, if you don't take too seriously, you're probably going to like. Moving on to characters now, I have to say that all the supporting characters within this story are very, fully rounded and just brilliant characters, what really enhance this story along. So let's talk about the Doctor, played by Tim Trelaw. Another excellent job capturing the third Doctor, with him tinkering with the TARDIS speakers, wanting, to do his own thing. And I just love how fascinated he becomes, with him trying to solve this mystery. And we have a few bits of the third Doctor's sharp wit, which is just lovely. And there is just some lovely moments with the third Doctor, talking to Jo, trying to talk Jo about building this device. And we just have this lovely moment of, the Doctor going, look, I have a great admiration for you, Jo. And it's just really a lovely moment between, the third Doctor and Jo, and I just love that great sense of urgency the Doctor has within the story where things start to go all wrong, and it's brilliant. Jo Grant, played by Katie Manning, just a wonderful story what just really makes Jo shine within this, and we see Jo's love for animals, and this story, I'm going to be honest, just feels like they've written for Katie Manning. It just feels like Katie Manning's there. It is just brilliant. She's very much hands-on within this story. She has moments where she's very authoritative when she needs to be. But like I said, part 4 is when Jo really comes into her own and shines, and it just shows how much she's learnt with being the Doctor by doing exactly what the Doctor does. And it's brilliant. It's just a really lovely moment where the Doctor goes, look, you're Unit's scientific advisor, I'll let you have the honours. And it's brilliant. It's a lovely little moment within episode 4, which I just love. The Brigadier, played by John Coleshaw, he does an even better job within the story, with him having that sort of dry wit, that sarky nature being really shown within this story. And this story really gives Brig, something a little bit different to do, which is rather nice. And I just love how, as soon as the Doctor's gone, the Brigadier's like, right, I'm going to take charge of this situation. And I just love that, how he thinks he has a solution, but of course, it's not the right solution. And I just love how he's just constantly trying to get his head around all this science baffle gabble and just trying to figure a way around this situation. I just love the Brigadier within this. It's just a brilliant story, and John Coleshaw does an even better job within it. Sergeant Benton, played by John Levine. Now, John Levine did a brilliant job, and you can tell that he's having an absolute blast bringing his character back to life, being the ever reliable and resourceful Sergeant Benton. The only problem I have really is he doesn't really get much to do within it. He has some lovely moments with the third Doctor and Jo, but the story, I don't really feel like it utilises him that much. But the story does expand on what Benton does when he's not on duty, which is rather nice in my opinion. Warren, played by Dominic Wood. Now, if you like me, you may recognise his voice because he's Dom from Dick and Dom in the Bungalow. That absolutely bonkers kids show, what really kick-started your Saturday morning off, and of course, The Legend of Dick and Dom, which is probably my favourite out of the two. But that's a video for another time. So that's a bit of childhood nostalgia right there, and I think that he does a brilliant job bringing Warren to life, playing this experimental music character. He's a bit of a blundering idiot, but his heart's in the right place with him helping the others, and he becomes quite an integral part of the plot with him trying to stop the Vardens with his own little plan. So what are my overall thoughts on The Scream of Ghosts by Guy Adams? Well, I think that this is a wonderful slice of third Doctor action, really evoking the era beautifully, with each character really getting a moment to shine, with some excellent character moments, a story what experiments with sound excellently with a story at times feeling quite unsettling. The story adds to the Big Finish Varden catalogue and showing, why they are brilliant monsters, and why they are just being, with them being, deliciously evil. We do have some nice little callbacks to Primords in it, so it makes this sort of set feel like a little mini series, which is lovely, instead of sort of 2 standalone stories. But they are technically standalone, but it's just nice to have that little reference just to intertwine the 2 together, which is a really nice little touch in my opinion. Now, in my opinion, this story is overshadowed by Primord, you know, which is understandable. But this story still is a good, solid outing. We have obviously Sergeant Benton back, but I just wish they used him a little bit more instead of being sidelined. Now, if you love the android invasion, then you're probably going to get a kick out of this story, because this story does have similar moments within this, with the sort of Varden sort of hovering around this sort of very idyllic English village. And this story has a great concept, and I love the use of sound within it, and the music really plays up to that fact within it, and it just has a great concept what feels incredibly, you know, of the time, very much a 1970s thing, and I love it. So I'm going to give this story a very good 8 out of 10. It's a very good, solid story, and is a nice way to close off Volume 5 of the Third Doctor Adventures. So what are my overall thoughts on this set? Well, I think that this is a wonderful set of stories, and this could possibly be my favourite of the range. And I say this, you know, that the stories just get better and better, and they're just constantly outdoing each other. And this one in particular, in my opinion, is very special because it stands out from the others, because this is, you know, one of the reasons why I love the Third Doctor era is because it's so different to any other era, with it being, you know, Earthbound. And this is one of my problems what I have with the previous Third Doctor Adventures box sets, in a way, is that, you know, you can only do so many stories of going, oh yes, the Brigadier sent us here, you know, like the Sea Devils. That's fine, but then you sort of become more apparent that, yeah, there is a gaping hole missing, and that's the Brigadier. Now, this box set was a massive risk. I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, this wasn't a risk at all, because you're recasting the Brigadier and Liz Shaw, 2 beloved characters who are loved by many fans, myself included. And in my personal opinion, I feel like this was a risk what needed to be taken, and I feel like the risk paid off. I genuinely believe that this is a step in the right direction, because this, in my opinion, has opened, you know, new doors for the Third Doctor on Big Finish, because the Third Doctor, in my opinion, does get sidelined on Big Finish. The First and Second Doctor, you know, they have companion chronicles, they have the early adventures, they have short trips. The Third Doctor just has 1 box set a year and maybe a short trip. So in my opinion, the Third Doctor is sort of the forgotten Doctor on Big Finish of the classic Doctors, in my opinion. So this was a risk worth taking for, because it feels like it's breathed new life within the range, because it's opened a whole new door of stories to tell. We could have a Season 7 box set, we could have, you know, a Third Doctor and Brigadier box set. It just opens up new exciting ways of telling a story, and I'm very excited to see where we're going to go with Volume 6. Could we see Captain Yates return? That would be lovely. You know, it does feel like this is the start of something amazing with Big Finish with the Third Doctor, and it just really makes me feel incredibly hopeful for this range, in my personal opinion. But the stories themselves, let's talk about the stories. Primord, I think Primord is a story what pushes boundaries beautifully for the range as a whole. The second story, you know, The Scream of Ghosts, brings things back down to basics, with it being more of a traditional Third Doctor story. And this box set definitely feels like, you know, 1970s Doctor Who distilled, and I love it because it feels like we have a direction for the Third Doctor and Big Finish now. You know, it feels like we were sort of aimlessly wandering with the other box sets, but now we have a direction, we have a focus. Let's go and have some more Third Doctor adventures, because it definitely feels like we are getting somewhere with the Third Doctor, and I definitely recommend this box set, and I just thought this was an absolute treat to listen to. And I definitely recommend it. If you're a Third Doctor fan, then you're definitely going to want to experience it. And this is one of the things, if you're too busy focusing on going, oh yeah, John Coleshaw and Daisy Ashford don't sound like, you know, the characters, then you're really going in with this box, you're really going in with the wrong mindset. I feel like if you focus on the stories, then you're going to have a really good time. And I think that's what you should do. And I think that this box set will certainly surprise you, because there's some amazing twists and some wonderful stories and great character moments. So yes, thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next Big Finish review, whatever that will be. So thank you very much, and goodbye.